Well, thank you so much, Sandra and Ben. Let's give them another round of applause. Now, I'd like to bring up my friend and colleague, Liliana Anguiano, to announce some data that we collected.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Congrats.
Thank you.
The Sun staff has been so honored to be a part of today's presentations. We were asked to conduct interviews to learn what our members of our community know about the Holocaust and other genocides. Our staff interviewed 62 people and we asked 3 questions. Please tell me what you know about the Holocaust, what did you learn about the Holocaust in school, and what other genocides are you aware of? We then combed through the responses using qualitative research techniques to identify themes. This is what we learned. Our first question was, please tell us what you know about the Holocaust. 32% gave exemplary answers that demonstrated basic knowledge of the Holocaust. 44% knew that the Holocaust involved Adolf Hitler and German Nazis. 19% knew that the Holocaust happened during World War II, and 16% knew that the Nazi prisoners were confined in concentration camps. 40% knew that the Holocaust was vaguely menacing to Jewish people, but could not express any further details. 11% knew that the people other than Jews were exterminated. 11% said that the Holocaust was a terrible thing, but could not identify any of its other victims. 2 persons interviewed responded with anti-Semitic statements.
The second question we asked was, what did you learn about the Holocaust in school? 21% felt that they had learned about the Holocaust in great detail. 37% felt that they had learned basic information about the Holocaust. 21% said that they had learned little about the Holocaust, and 13% said that they had learned absolutely nothing about the Holocaust in school.
4 students who attended school in Mexico said their curriculum did not include the Holocaust. They said they learned about it on their own in the United States. Many students educated in the United States who did not learn about the Holocaust in school said they were motivated to learn more about it on their own. About 1/3 of the students said they learned much about it from movies like The Schindler's List, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and The Diary of Anne Frank.
Our third question was, what other genocides are you aware of? 49% of the respondents could not name any genocides. That was the most common answer to this question. 21% said the U.S. extermination of Native Americans in the 19th century. 19% said the 1994 Rwandan genocide. 10% said the 1975 to 1979 Cambodian genocide. And 8% identified the 1915 Armenian genocide by the Ottoman Empire.
5% named the 1937 Rape of Nanking, China by Japan. 5% named the Belgian Congo genocide that began in 1885, and 2 persons identified the 1910 Korean genocide by Japan. 2 persons identified the Muslim Uyghur atrocities by China, and 2 persons identified the 1995 Bosnian Muslim genocide by Bosnian Serbs. Other genocides or mass killing mentions were the Romanian, Guatemalan, the Maoist China Great Leap Forward, and the genocide starting in 1958, and the extermination of indigenous people in Mexico. That concludes our presentation. I would like to thank the journalists of our campus newspaper, our professor and advisor, Dr. Max Branscombe, for their hard work. Several are in the audience here today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Now it is my pleasure to bring back to stage Ms. Leanne Kim and Dr. Sanchez.
Great job. Congratulations. Thank you so much. And congratulations to the Southwestern College's Sun newspaper, which is known now, has been recognized as one of the best student newspapers in the country at this college. And we can see why. And like Anita had mentioned earlier, that great journalism uncovers the truth. And there has been a war on truth, or against truth. In fact, even South Bay residents, despite its diversity, are not immune to hate, bias, and discrimination. I want to show you this slide here. Recently, the ADL announced that a former Chula Vista resident who's been a very public figure in the neo-Nazi movement was arrested in Poland. And here's a look at some of the banners that he was associated with here in our neighborhoods, one in Los Angeles and one right off of the 805 there. And I don't want to give any more, to this, but Dr. Sanchez, I wanted to turn to you and talk to you. As we know, this is still happening in our community. So what is the college's responsibility, do you think, in creating a safe space and creating a place where everybody belongs?
Yes, and so just before I get into what Southwestern College represents in terms of creating a safe space for our community and for our students, I do want to cite the fact that there's been a 38% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in San Diego County just over the last year. And so the way that we get at this is through education and dialogue. And so as a part of the President's Speaker Series, I felt it was important to create this venue where we could educate our community, share information about anti-Semitism, including the fact that there's been an increase on anti-Semitic events on college and university campuses. As a matter of fact, just under half of those incidents make reference to Israel or Zionism. So this is an opportunity as an educational institution to educate our community, educate our students, with the goal of creating a better tomorrow for our students and for our community. But our values are very straightforward. They're very explicit, that Southwestern College is a welcoming environment to all in our community, where everyone has value to be able to step onto this campus and to get an education, and to do that without harassment and discrimination. So you have my personal assurance that Southwestern College will never let anti-Semitism or any other type of hate embed into our organizational culture. And then if I could just add one thing, anti-Semitism is a part of a matrix of hate. So anytime you have anti-Semitism, you also have anti-Blackness, you have anti-Asian hate, anti-LGBT, anti-immigrant, anti-brown. And all of those hate agendas are rooted in white supremacy. So we must acknowledge that, because when we see incidents happen across the country, they are usually timed in close sequence to one another, and usually impacting our most marginalized communities. So Southwestern must educate our community. We must educate the next generation of learners. I see our college students here today, which brings me great joy, because you're the great hope for our future and a better tomorrow. So thank you for being here.
I know that Southwestern College, because of that, you do an excellent job in developing partnerships, and we're so grateful again to Rob Hicks over the Anti-Defamation League. This conversation is very timely because they just released recently their annual report on anti-Semitism, and you had a chance to talk to him about the trends. Do you want to share a little bit? We have a graph here. You can share some of what Rob had shared with you.
Yeah, and in my opening statement, I really wanted to acknowledge Rob for being a tremendous partner. I hope we made you feel valued when we brought you out to the college and gave you a tour. And it was, you always want to ensure that when you're creating your talking points that you hear firsthand from the communities that are often most impacted. And so I spent a tremendous amount of time with Robert talking about anti-Semitism. And I think the data speaks for itself. Over a 10-year period, you can see the significant increase in anti-Semitism in our country. It's a significant jump over the last 10 years. And so we have to ask ourselves, how do we boldly start to get at this? And I truly believe that we get at this through education, through dialogue, and by coming together and sharing our experiences so that we can stop this trend, because it's dismal.
And here is that pyramid of hate that you were referring to, that was brought to us by the ADL. And you can see, it starts with biased attitudes, tropes, saying certain things about certain people. And at the very top, there is that connection from those tropes and those attitudes all the way to killing one another. And so we're living in a world now where we have to have these kind of conversations so that we can recognize and nip things in the bud. And as we see these trends right now, despite the racial reckoning that this country had gone through during the pandemic, the trends are showing that the Holocaust denial is at its highest. Anti-Semitism, higher than ever before. Incidents of hate continue happening. So can we turn now to Rob really quickly? I just wanted to say, sometimes I feel, some of us might feel really hopeless. But I know that organizations like yours and exhibitions like Sandra Scheller's help us to bring some hope. Tell us a little bit about some of the calls to action that the ADL is working on, Rob. And you can stand up and speak from there.
Yes, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, well, thank you. Well, I know this conversation can be weighing psychologically, but there are things that we can do. There are people who want to push hate and push lies, but we have the power to stand up for truth and dignity. And one of the ways we can do that is through legislation. And that QR code will take you to a number of bills that you can support. And one of them is the HEAL Act, the Holocaust Education and Anti-Semitism Learning Act. And we heard data from those really inspiring journalist students who shared data that really show the gaps in knowledge about the Holocaust and genocide. So this bill would create a commission to study the state of Holocaust education in the US. It's not mandated currently in every state, and in those states that do have it, not every district implements it as fully or as robustly as it could. So this bill will help us get to a place where future generations of Americans will know where hate has led us, regardless of their zip code. And there are a number of bills covering topics on extremist funding, securing places of worship and vulnerable institutions from the rise in domestic extremism. And legislation is just one part of, one piece of the puzzle. We also have the power to speak up when we hear hate. Like we saw the pyramid. We have the power to check hate and speak up when we hear it before it escalates. And I know this conversation can be a little depressing, but we shared a victory that the former Chula Vista resident who leads a hate group was arrested in Poland. Well, fortunately, another leader of a hate group was just convicted in Washington, D.C. for the attack that he led on the nation's capital on January 6, 2021. So this is, we talked about how anti-Semitism is part of a matrix of hate. We can't operate in silos. It's a whole of society approach. It's speaking up, it's advocating, and advocating for legislation as well. So I appreciate the chance to share that with everyone. And we have some resources at the ADL table to help you share facts and speak up. And that QR code will take you to a number of bills you can support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate you. And thank you so much, Dr. Sanchez, for your commitment in these kind of conversations. And so now we're going to move to the future. Let's turn our sights from the ugly past to a more hopeful future.